Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome to my garden. I'm really happy to have you here with me today. So what is really exciting about this particular walk through the garden is that I have not actually walked through my garden in almost a week. So even though we saw each other here on YouTube a couple of days ago, we have actually been away on holidays for the last week, and this is my first walk through the garden since we got back. I thought you might like to come along with me as I take this first wander through, because so much changes in the garden in a week. And even though we are into autumn, at least weather-wise, here in the interior of British Columbia, and the garden definitely does slow down in its growth, there's still a lot of change that happens in that period of time. So I just cannot wait to see. So the first thing that I can tell you right now is that my apples are ready to be picked, and my sea buckthorn or sea berry over here is also very close. We're gonna let it go a little bit longer because we want these berries to be bright orange all the way through before we pick them, but they're very close. I came out to around 6:30 a.m. this morning and I could see my breath in the air. So there has definitely been a shift in the temperature. I can feel it and I can see the effects of that on the garden. We have some leaves over there on my plum tree that are starting to change color, and of course the beautiful red on the apples. So definitely some fall vibes, but I did check the weather report this morning, as I do every morning, and we are supposed to have some really nice, gorgeous, sunny, and even hot weather over this next week. We're supposed to get up to 29 degrees Celsius on, I think, Saturday or Sunday, which is very, very warm for this time of year. That heat, though, should be absolutely fantastic for my squash and finishing up my peppers and my tomatoes in the high tunnel. So very excited about that. Oh my goodness. I am definitely going to need to do a little bit of pruning on this pathway out to the main garden. So this is my raspberry patch here, and it has kind of migrated over to the other side, which I actually really love. I do have some T-posts here with some twine to hold these back, but I'm going to need to add a little bit more twine and probably cut some of these back so that it's easier to access the garden. The raspberries did so amazing this summer in comparison to last summer, not with the production of the raspberries themselves, because those were a little lackluster, but with all the new growth. And I think this is due to the cooler spring temperatures and the amount of rain that we got in the early spring, because they just completely took off. So beautiful. Okay, let's get through here. Holy cow, friends, look at this. Look at how much bigger our Dill's Atlantic Giant pumpkin got here since we last visited this spot. So these Cinderella pumpkins, these are actually probably ready to be picked. They are looking nice and dark orange, which is what you want for a Cinderella pumpkin. But this pumpkin, this is actually fairly small for a Dill's Atlantic. They can get absolutely huge. But if we can hold off on getting any frost for the next week or two, the potential for this to get massive is definitely there. What's really cool is I half expected to come home and find that we had had a frost, because it is not uncommon for us to have a light frost in August. In fact, I think we have had every year since we moved here 9 years ago. But we have not had a frost, and looking at the weather, it doesn't look like we have even the risk of frost for at least another week, which is fantastic for these squash. Oh dear, oh no. 2 of my giant sunflowers are gone. What the heck? Looks like we had a little bit of an issue with, I don't know what the heck that is. It looks like something ate the bottom of these sunflowers. This gorgeous one, thank goodness, is still standing tall. I have never had that happen before in my garden, where I've had sunflowers fall over like that. How weird. Fortunately though, all the rest of the sunflowers are still looking just stunning. Oh my goodness, friends. Look at how beautiful everything's looking. I can definitely see the lack of my attention over the last week, because one of the things that I've taken to doing over the last couple of years is continuing with weeding all the way through to the end of the summer. And the reason for that is because a lot of weeds start going to seed this time of year, and getting them out of the garden is going to make next year's garden less weedy, basically. So I just have been trying to stay on top of the weeds all summer long, but I can see my lack of weeding. Oh my goodness. All these weeds coming up in here. So getting some, I'm gonna have to come through here and definitely do a little weed pulling, that's for sure. It actually looks like there was not as much rain as I was hoping there was going to be while we were gone, because this ground is looking pretty dry. But that, my friends, is a beautiful bolero carrot. And all the carrots are looking good. So what I am looking for here is any nibble marks on the top of the carrots, because this time of year the mice will come into the garden and start nibbling on the carrots, and that's kind of my cue to harvest them. But I don't see anything like that. These are looking absolutely great. So that is good news. I suspect we're gonna have about a bajillion pickling cucumbers over here. They're probably mammoth in size. Let's see here. Oh, that's actually not too bad. Oh yeah, there we go. Giant pickling cucumbers. So I could probably safely go through here, do one more harvest on these pickling cucumbers, and then just pull all of these vines out, because they are definitely done for the year. There's a little Burgess buttercup squash over there. The squash along this part here did not do really well. I'm not entirely sure why, but yeah, they just didn't do great. Got a few little sugar pumpkins in there that are starting to turn. Look at the size of that. That is not going to do much in the next couple of weeks that we have that's frost free. Well, that's interesting. This cue ball squash I thought was done as far as production goes, but it's decided to produce a whole bunch more fruit. Oh my goodness. Look at the size of that zucchini. That is a monster zucchini. So definitely going to be harvesting. Oh my goodness. Harvesting some zucchini. Look at that. How beautiful is that? It is definitely ginormous. Great year for zucchini this year though. Super happy with that. So I will harvest all those really big ones. I'll just take out the seeds and run it through the food processor and freeze dry it for the winter. Okay, what else do we got? Let's go check over here in our other squash patch. So this is that beautiful yellow squash, that crookneck, and I can imagine we have some giant ones in here. Well, they're not too bad. So everyone tells me to pick these when they're really small. Like this one is bigger than is recommended. However, I did pick them at this size when I made that casserole the other day, and it wasn't bad. Like the skin wasn't super tough or anything. So I think I have quite a few in here we can pick as well. This squash patch is basically all just showy, beautiful green. There's not a lot of squash in here. Let me show you. Let's see. What do we have in here? Another tiny little butternut squash that does not have a chance of ripening. Let me see. See what I mean? There's just so many leaves and just not a lot of actual fruit in underneath. Oh, there's a little one down there. So I think what I'll do is I'll just let this go until the frost kills off these leaves on the top and then see what we find in underneath. But I don't expect it's going to be very many. I have not had great luck the last 2 years growing squash. This is definitely the worst I have had. Last year was okay, but not great. Whereas the prior 5 or 6 years, I had amazing squash harvests. And I'm chalking it up to the cold springs that we've had. So, and there's really not much that I can do about that because I did keep these all covered with frost blankets early in the spring. I suppose what I could do is start them under low tunnels, and then yeah, that's probably what I should do. So yeah, there is something that I can do. I can just get some tunnels, little poly tunnels that I can pull back when the plants, or when the temperatures warm up and the plants kind of outgrow them, because they do outgrow them fairly quickly. But that would probably solve the problem. Look at this. Oh my word. Now that is a gigantic zucchini right there. That's probably the biggest or the longest zucchini I've ever seen. The cosmos are just beautiful. Oh my goodness. This is so weird. I've never had any type of issues with growing sunflowers before, but look at this. Ton of the sunflowers completely fell over. Let's go over and see if it's because they've been chewed on along the bottom of them. This is so bizarre. Look at that. So look, I don't know if that's just like broke off by the weight, like from the weight of the plant. Look. That is just the weirdest thing. Have you guys ever had this happen before? It's almost like they rotted a little bit around the bottom and then just broke off with the weight of them. That is so bizarre. That is just such a shame. I had this vision of this big wall of multicolored sunflowers down here, and now it just looks like a mess. I'm gonna have to come in here and just pull all these out and hope that these last few that are standing are gonna be okay. That is truly the weirdest thing. So do you remember last week, or maybe it was the week before, I was saying that I thought potentially I had planted these too densely, and that's why they were falling over, because they were starting to fall over before I left, but not break off on the bottom like this, and certainly not all at once like it looked like this happened, because this certainly wasn't like this when I left. But I don't think that is the case, since the ones that we saw when we first came into the garden had lots of space between them. Oh, my favorite one. Oh no. This is my favorite one, and it's called Autumn Beauty. And look, it has also fallen over. Darn. That's really too bad. So yeah, I guess what I'm going to do is go through here and clean this up. Hope that the ones that are remaining stay standing. I mean, realistically, I only have probably 4 more weeks left of the garden anyway, but still, that's kind of disappointing. I was so excited all summer about the vision of this wall of flowers that was going to be at the end of my garden, or at the bottom of my garden, but nothing about it really worked out, did it? I had the issue with planting the cosmos across the front and the zinnias in behind, and what I should have done is put the zinnias in the front, because although the zinnias are back there, they got, of course, shaded out and kind of choked out by these giant, very enthusiastic cosmos in the front. Also, I planted the cosmos a bit too densely, so they just kind of started falling over too. And then, of course, there's this new issue with my sunflowers falling over. So I shall not be deterred. So I am going to stick with my vision of my beautiful wall of flowers at the bottom of my garden. I am just going to reimagine it and try again next year. And that's kind of the thing about gardening, I find, is that every year there's something that doesn't go according to plan or according to my vision, but I always learn, and then the following year it's always a little bit better. My garden is always a little bit better the next year. So I know that will stand true for next year, and there were a ton of things that were super successful in my garden this year. So I'll just do what I can to kind of clean this up a little bit, because it's still going to look pretty, especially when all kind of the mess is cleaned up there. It'll still look pretty, just not quite what I had in mind. And then I'll just have fun planting next year's. I probably can pull a few more green beans. Yeah, there's still some more. It'll be the last harvest out of this bed too. I'll be really focusing my attention as far as harvesting in the garden over the next couple of days. Actually, I'll probably wait about 4 days, and I'll explain why in a minute. But on getting kind of the stuff that needs to be dealt with right away, like the beans, the pickling cucumbers, the zucchinis, all that stuff. Those plants will actually come out of the garden. I'll prep those beds for winter. And then next week, we'll move on to getting all of the root veggies out, like the beets, the carrots, the turnips, potatoes. We can probably wait a little bit longer for those. Yeah, and then we'll get those taken out and put those in the root cellar. So it's going to be a busy couple of weeks getting the garden all harvested, and then we'll be spending a bunch of time getting it all ready for winter. This is fennel. I decided to let one of my fennel plants go to seed. And I don't know if we're going to have time to actually get fennel seed off of this, but I guess we'll wait and see. But look in behind it. Look at these beautiful zinnia that are in here. These are such a gorgeous color. I'll look up the name of these. I got these from West Coast Seeds. I think it was called Undersea or Coral Mix maybe. But they're just gorgeous. Look at that one. How pretty. I love this color right here. Look at the number of heads on that sunflower there. My goodness. This little bed here is definitely ready for some harvest action. We have sage that needs to be harvested in here. We have mint and rosemary, lots of mint, of course. Lemon balm down there, some Greek oregano here. But those can hold off for a little bit, so I'll focus on what really needs to be done and deal with this a little bit later on. Oh look, I'm getting some scarlet runner. These are Emperor scarlet runner beans, and I'm actually getting some beans on there. Lots of pretty flowers. Little sweet peas that I planted in here have just decided to bloom now. So pretty. Look at that bright pink one there. We did get almost 10 millimeters of rain while we were gone. The garden just seems a little bit dry, and I'm wondering if that's partly why the sunflowers broke off like that, is maybe they just didn't have enough moisture in them. I don't know, it's a mystery. Oh, these zinnia. So these are a giant zinnia mix, and they're really pretty. Yeah, interestingly, all the sunflowers up on this side of the garden are great, whereas the ones that are on the far side of the garden are struggling. Oh, this is something else I have to deal with too. This kale, I usually wait to do kind of my big harvest of my kale, where I freeze dry it and then grind it up into a powder in the fall after we've had frost, because it sweetens up, and also it can hold in the frost, whereas there's a lot of other plants that can't. So I usually leave this till the end. Oh, we have another gigantic zucchini in there. I've pulled most of the stuff out of my Greenstock that was here. Remember, I tried to plant some larger things, like I think I put a watermelon in there, a zucchini, a couple of other things, and those did not really do that great. So I pulled those out quite a while ago. But the things that seem to do really, really well in the Greenstock, so the geraniums and the petunias do really well, and herbs seem to do really well in these Greenstocks. So I'm definitely going to keep that in mind when I plant out my Greenstocks again next year, which I can't wait. I want to have many, many Greenstocks because I just think they're so beautiful. Okay, now comes the real moment that I have been waiting for, and that is my high tunnel. I had left my high tunnel closed while I was gone because in looking at the weather forecast, it was supposed to be overcast for the entire time that we were away. And so I left it closed. I gave it a good soak before I left. We did have somebody staying out here just to make sure that all the animals, of course, were taken care of, but I just told them not to worry about the high tunnel. So let's see what we can find. But I told them not to worry about the high tunnel, so let's see what we find in there. A jungle. That's what I found. Oh my goodness. Oh! It's raining. There's so much humidity in here. Well, I have to admit, I expected to have more ripe tomatoes on here than I see. We have some, you can see here, and lots that are getting a blush on them. But I kind of thought there might be a lot of them. My whole idea of putting this up to hold the peppers from falling over, I can see that it's worked as far as these aren't on the ground. So that's good. I can see that it did get hot in here. So when the leaves roll over like this is a heat stress thing like this, you can see here, but nothing looks like it's seriously damaged or anything. So do you know what I'm finding kind of interesting about this is how my garden feels really unkept, even though it was only left for I think it was 6 days. So not that terribly long. And we're also not in the period of time of intense growth in the garden. If I had left it back in, say, the beginning of August or in July, I would have come back and the garden would have seemed like an entirely different place because it would have put on so much growth at that point. Whereas the garden is slowing down a lot at this point, which is quite noticeable because I haven't really noticed a ton of growth since I walked through my garden last time. I don't feel like I do a ton in the garden outside of harvesting by around the first week of August or so. There's not a lot of trellising to do and weeding to do and things like that. But I must do quite a bit each day when I come out and hang out in the garden because it feels really unkept and really like slightly abandoned, which is funny because I feel almost bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. As you know, if you've been here for any length of time, you know that I love my garden. Like I truly do. It fills me with so much joy. I love spending time. I love working with nature to create something beautiful. And I definitely missed it when I don't have a chance to do it. And I feel like I neglect it. You know, it's interesting because I know that there's so much talk about the damage that human beings do to nature. But one of the things that managing the land that we have around us and being a gardener has taught me is that human beings can also really help and nurture and make what can happen in nature even better and more beautiful. So I'm going to show you what I mean. If I can get my door open here. So do you see these little tiny sunflowers here? So these are some sunflower seeds that I threw out here in the early spring. A couple extra seeds I had, I thought, oh, I'll throw them out here and see what happens. And this is what happened just being left, not maintained, not watered, not weeded or anything like that. And they're not even going to have time to bloom. Whereas the sunflowers that have been nurtured, planted in good soil, kept weeded, watered, all of those kinds of things are way bigger and way more robust and healthy than those ones that were left to nature, just to their own devices. And I really love that. I love, like, obviously human beings can cause a lot of damage too, but we can also, in partnership with nature, create something so incredibly beautiful and even better than it would be if it was just left on its own. Like, look at these. Look at that. Isn't that stunning? It's so bright and yellow. It looks like sun shining out of it. Oh, look at this. So what I've been told about these squash is that I need to wait until they turn color, like this one is doing here, and easily pulls off the vine. So this one's not quite there yet, but you can see the difference between this one and, say, this one here that hasn't turned color at all. I so hope that we're going to get enough warm weather to actually ripen these, at least a few of them. This little honeydew melon is looking good. This little cantaloupe over here is also looking good. Red tomatoes on our Greenstock tomatoes. A couple more over here. So these type of tomatoes, these tumbling tomatoes, they do seem to do okay in the Greenstock too. Same with the lobelia and the sweet alyssum. Those ones did really well too. The geraniums did fantastic. These ones obviously need to be seriously deadheaded, but they did really, really well in the Greenstock. So we definitely have some tomatoes to pick here. And on the topic of tomatoes, so remember how I said I'm going to have to wait and do some of the harvesting in the garden in about 4 days. So on our way home from our trip, we stopped at a farm and picked up all of our tomatoes that we pick up every fall, because I can't grow enough tomatoes in my high tunnel to cover. I would need a second high tunnel in order to be able to do that, and which is the goal for down the road. But for now, what I normally do with the tomatoes out of the high tunnel is I turn those into things that I want that homegrown tomato flavor in, like salsa, for instance, pizza sauce. I love making our pizza sauce out of our homegrown tomatoes. Anything that's kind of a little bit where you want that really awesome homegrown tomato flavor. And then just for my basic diced tomatoes, like canned diced tomatoes, tomato sauce and things like that, I buy them from the farm. So needless to say, we did pick up 400 pounds of tomatoes and 100 pounds of other things. I think I got some red onions because my red onions this year didn't do great. Some colored peppers because all of the peppers that I have in my high tunnel right now are green. So I wanted some colored peppers to add to my salsa. What else did we get? I think that's it. Anyway, I'm gonna have to deal with all of those first before I deal with all of the produce out of the garden. I did buy them slightly underripe so that I didn't have to come home and on the first day get right into preserving. So I'm going to take today to just kind of get caught up on some things that need to get caught up around the house, and then we're going to get into that preserving. And I will most definitely be bringing you along with me for that. I absolutely love doing big batch canning days. I find it a lot of work, of course, but it is also so incredibly rewarding. To just be able to work really hard for a couple of days and then have all of my tomato products on my pantry shelves for an entire year. It's a very good feeling. Oh my gosh, look at these. This is my youngest daughter's little flower garden, and it seemed to take forever to actually grow, but now all of a sudden it has decided to just go crazy. Those are beautiful. She's going to be excited to come down and see this. It's going to be a very, very busy next couple of weeks as we kind of pull everything in out of the garden, get all of that stuff preserved, get the garden cleaned up and set up for winter or ready for winter. And then of course, preserving all of that food that we just bought from that local farm. It makes me tired just thinking about it. But I do know by the time it's done and the cooler weather really starts to set in, I am going to feel so good, and I am going to be able to also rest. One of the things that I really love about this time of year in particular is that I know I'm going to have to work really hard, but I also know that a period of slowing down and shifting gears is also around the corner. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye, everyone.